Hello there, you're looking fantastic today, and welcome to this book review. I don't have the physical copy in because I had to turn it back to the library, plus the film, like the usual film for library books, was really gray and beat up, so I don't think the book cover looked good anyway. So I'll just put the cover here for a few minutes while we dive in to the review. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. It's hovering in the middle of 4. I really enjoyed it. I think, however, it's going to be really difficult for Taylor to get to the point of the 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. That was perfection. I read that book a few years ago when it came out, and it perfection, right? So that's a high bar. It was my first Taylor Jenkins Reid book. So I set a high bar, or she set the high bar. There's a high bar, whatever it is. But all of her books that I've read so far, and I'm going to continue into that, have been 4 stars. I think that's great. But let's get into why it's not 5 stars instead of 4 stars. Now, in the beginning, when it was mainly Daisy talking, who's the main character, she is one of the big names, of course, Daisy Jones and the Six, right? So it's Daisy Jones and the Six, which is a band that she merges with, and there's some trouble when that happens, because her and Billy, the lead singer, lots of clashes, lots of problems, lots of drama, and they ultimately split up. That's not a spoiler, that is what's discussed in the summary, and they say it right up front in like the first chapter. So don't come at me saying that's a spoiler. It's not. It's like a whole thing. The point of the book is actually in the style of interviews for a autobiography, in a way, for Daisy Jones and the Six, the band. So all the band members and family and friends and all that stuff are being interviewed. And that's where it got a little muddy for me. There are some instances where I don't think you need to have someone interject like a one sentence when, let's just say, Daisy, for example, went on a rant for like 4 paragraphs. So it takes up most of the page, and then you have like one character say 5 words. And then Daisy goes on for another 3 paragraphs, and then someone else has 2 sentences. And then Billy comes in and he has 6 paragraphs. And so I don't know if that was on purpose to like try and break things up or something like that, but I found it a bit distracting. It pulled me out of the story a bit. And I think it was a little too disjointed when you do that type of thing, when someone, especially the 2 main characters, are given a lot of space to speak, and then like a side character, or what you would say like the bass guitarist, for example, only gets a sentence or 2. Now, the possible point of doing that is to show that the drama, one of the many dramas, is that it's all about Daisy and Billy, and everyone else is left to the side, and you can kind of see that in the interview style. Or it could be something along the lines of the writer of the autobiography is trying to give the other artists in the band more space to speak, but I don't see that when it's like a sentence, maybe 2. And it's like, especially if it's only 4 words in a sentence, which does happen a little bit, wasn't a fan of. And another thing is, which I don't know if it was meant to be that way or not, and I can see the argument for it being made that way and it being not made that way, but I don't like Daisy and I don't like Billy. They're both really annoying. However, that is kind of what happens when you have lead singers a lot of the times. In these bands, the lead singer takes over and becomes annoying. So that's why I can see the argument. Like, you're not going to make both or one of the other lead singer extremely likable, because maybe that's not realistic. I don't know. I think it would have been a little more interesting if one of them was nicer and not as egotistical. But then again, this is in the 70s, there's a lot of drugs, there's a lot of sex, there's a lot of breaking the law, and that was that was the normal for these types of bands. It's like a soft rock band, and they get really big with this one particular album, and just things go haywire. The trope is a little overdone, I would say. Kind of getting into like a cliche. However, is it a cliche if lead singers are nasty? Like, I don't know, maybe I just have a lower tolerance now. I don't think that the lead singer drama and them being nasty and egotistical and I'm the best there is type of attitude is attractive. I did, when I was a teenager, because, I don't know, angst. I think that's a thing for teenagers and young adults, like in their early 20s, where it's like they're trying to be part of the band because they're obsessed with the band, because it makes them feel wanted, important, part of the story. They have a boring life, or maybe they have a sucky life, and that's a distraction, things like that. So maybe reading it at 29, I feel a little bit disconnected with the drama and the interest of what's going on with the details of the drama, because that was really talked about, especially in the middle of the book, and that was kind of like the slump for me. But I thought they were interesting. I didn't like them, but they were interesting, and that's why I kept going with the novel. And I think that's a big deal. You can write interesting characters and not like them. I think that means that Taylor is a fantastic writer. I know she's a fantastic writer, but just me talking about the negatives at first, I just want to intercept that and say she's a fantastic writer and storyteller, because she has figured out a way to write interesting characters, and you don't necessarily have to like them to enjoy the novel, which would be my experience, full stop. I was interested in the inner workings of Billy specifically, not so much Daisy, which I think is interesting, but Billy was interesting because he becomes an addict and he cheats on his wife, and then he bounces back and she stays with him. And I think that's an interesting plot point, because people don't understand, like the normal people normal people don't understand that that's actually pretty common for Hollywood. It doesn't matter if you're an actor or singer. A lot of the time, there's some infidelity in the marriage, but does it count as infidelity if you don't care about it? And as long as they, your husband or your wife comes back to you every single time and treats you well and treats your family well and supports you and loves you, all that stuff, then does it matter if they slept with a stranger on the tour that's 5 months long? That's something that people don't realize until the whole Adam Levine thing came about, and people were like, wait, this is what happens? Yeah, that's basically what happens. So I just think it's interesting that, I forget when this book was published, not too long ago, that this was being talked about and written about before that whole Adam Levine thing came out. And it's just a glimpse of, if you're in California or like around LA, or like really deep into celebrity drama for, whatever reason, or you have like a family member or friend in Hollywood, and not necessarily an actress or a singer or anything like that, maybe like a producer or stunt men. But if you're close to LA, you understand that fidelity is an issue. Drug use is an issue as well. Partying so much that you can't function is also an issue. And we talk about that a lot, and we see it a lot with specifically Billy, but also Daisy, because Daisy is addicted to drugs and she drinks a lot. I don't know if she didn't say that she was an alcoholic, she said she was a drug addict in her sections. So I'm just gonna say she classifies herself as an addict for drugs but not alcohol. But Billy is everything. Like, he's done it all, and he is grappling with that fact because he didn't come from Hollywood, so it's not like a nepotism thing. He came from, what was it, like somewhere in the East, and his parents weren't rich or anything like that, so it was very much climbing up the ladder, and I like to see that. And then you also see the pitfalls of that because it's so new and you have no idea about how to handle it or what to do, what not to do if you're faced with like a bunch of groupies but you're married and you have a child on the way and like there's a bunch of drugs everywhere. I mean, there's nepotism involved. You still have the pitfalls of that, right? But it's not brand spanking new, like you've never heard it before because you lived on a farm type of thing. Like you've lived in LA or around LA. You've seen it at least. So this is a difference for Billy and then his brother Graham, and then also the whole band. But really Billy is trying to figure out what's going on. At least with Daisy, her mom's a model, her dad's an artist. They're not great parents. And they just let her do whatever, and that's where the foundation of her being messed up comes from. But she does at least understand that LA is different from the rest of the world, really. And she can get away with stuff that most people can't. And she does, and then she realizes pretty early on that's not okay. And you know, by the end of the book, things work itself out, but there is a bit more interest in Billy, probably because he messed up hardcore, and if I were his wife, I would not be his wife any longer. However, and this is what something people were really mind-boggled about. And just every time you hear it now, or heard it in the past, where, yeah, there's an agreement. And the agreement with Billy's wife and him is that, yeah, he needs to stay sober, right? But she does have, like, the thing in the back of her head, is he sleeping with groupies? And that she accepts it, but don't bring it home type of thing. That's just a fascinating psychology that I'm not going down that road, like, but that's why I have no interest in marrying a musician. But that's kind of what you have to have a discussion about, or you have to realize internally that, like, the majority, maybe it's like 55%, I don't know, or maybe it's 70%, but it is a majority of people in Hollywood. They're not going to be faithful at least one time. So that's kind of what you have to weigh. But you also are weighing the fact that you're getting a lot of money, and there's a lot of stability in a big mansion and royalties that are for the rest of your life if you don't spend it all, which is a problem for a lot of people. And so, you know, divorce happens. Now, I'm not saying that everyone in Hollywood cheats and does drugs and all that stuff. I'm saying the majority does. But you also do see Pete, who's like a side character, side person in the band. Sorry, but that's kind of, it is what it is, right? he is loyal to his girlfriend turned wife for the whole time. So there is a balance that is shown. And Billy does cheat on his wife in the beginning, but then never does at, onwards when he gets sober in a rehab facility about 1/3 or something into the book. And I think it was a interesting plot. It's not even a side plot, it's a plot of the story, because he is grappling with fame and fortune and wanting to do things but doesn't do them, and one of them does have to do with Daisy, and that's a big spoiler. I'm not going to say what that is, but that kind of is what unravels the band. The drugs and partying kind of started it, but the stuff that unravels the band between Daisy and Billy, I was actually kind of shocked about it, because it's set up like all the partying and the drugs are going to ruin the band. Not the case. That's a semi-spoiler. Sorry, but I do want to mention that because it blew my mind. I did not figure that out. So again, props to Taylor for writing a book that I thought something was going to happen with the band breaking up and all that stuff, but it turns out to be something else, and that was a good ending. Thank you so much for watching my book review on Daisy Jones and the Six. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.